Recording is started.
Okay.
Great.
Should I go ahead?
I'll continue with my intro, Deva. So I wanted to welcome everyone to this session, part of the Women in Science Professional Development Series for the fall that's focused on imposter syndrome. We're happy to have Deva here to talk about her research with imposter syndrome. Before we get to that, I wanted to just mention that we have a strict code of conduct for Women in Science Portland. And if there's any breaches to this code of conduct during this seminar in any way, please alert us immediately in the chat or even with your microphone, and we can address it at that point. And I think, Astrid, can you drop the link to the code of conduct for people to have?
Yep, absolutely.
I also want to mention that at Women in Science Portland, we really respect and honor the time that the women give to our organization. And so as part of that, we commit to giving each of our speakers an honorarium every time that they do an event for us. And we ask that if you're able to donate to us, any donations made to the link that'll be put in the chat will go towards an honorarium for our speaker today. So please do that if you're able. And then I think that's all of the bits. Oh, please also participate in the chat. There's a question on the screen right now to kind of get us started. This is a good way to engage. And as Deva is doing her presentation, I can help facilitate any questions people have. So please utilize that. And with that, I will turn it over to Deva to introduce herself.
Thank you, Lily. It's a pleasure to be here. A quick introduction about myself. I'm right now, I'm a faculty at the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. We are a business school, and I'm specifically in the department of, we have a Center for Educational Innovation. I got interested in this research on the imposter syndrome, well, for a while now, but I've been doing this research for about 3 years. I started when I was a faculty at Washington State University. A little bit of background, I got a PhD in science education after getting graduate degrees at my undergrad in the sciences. I was more interested in, I got interested in what gets people in science and how do we not only get people in science, but help them stay in science. So, I mean, please be generous with your questions, any question you have. I will be talking about some of the interesting things that I found about the imposter syndrome as we go along in this presentation. Syndrome, phenomenon, these words, these terms are synonymous, although the more correct or more appropriate term is phenomenon. There's, like Melissa said last in her talk, that there is some kind of judgment associated with the word syndrome. The word syndrome is more popularly used, which is why I've put it here. But if you read the papers that I wrote, I tend to use the term phenomenon. So to quickly give you an introduction about what we'll talk of today, we'll look at specific examples. I've interviewed hundreds of people. This study was done in the United States. I interviewed close to 400 people who shared, not only women, but people of all genders, who shared what made them feel like imposters, how did it manifest. So what I'm presenting here is kind of a synopsis, a summary of everything that I found. Also, how does it impact people in STEM? This particular study I did with people who are in STEM, either as PhD students, postdocs, or in the industry, or faculty, or people in different positions in academia. We'll also talk about what can be done about it. Is it something that stays with you all your life, or can it be overcome? Actually, I've seen a lot more engagement with this topic in the last 5 years or so. A lot of even like famous people have talked about it publicly. However, I also found that a lot of people did not know about the term until very recently. So I've seen people with all kinds of experiences talking about, what does the chatter in the head, what does the inner voice say? And these are quotes from people. Um, and I mean, you might identify with some of them, with all of them. When I was offered a position in Google, I thought I just got lucky. I feel I'm invisible. I should not be here. Someone regrets giving me a job, having me in the lab. I do not apply for something because I don't think I deserve it. I don't belong. I don't belong in the sciences. I don't belong in the program itself. Accepting me was a disastrous mistake. So there are a lot of self-sabotaging, self-limiting voices in the head that people talk about. What it boils down to is, for people who feel like imposters, they see that other people succeed because of their own merit and other people fail because of bad luck. But if I feel like an imposter and I'm succeeding, then it has got nothing to do with merit. It has got everything to do with luck, with God, with my advisor, with my boss, with someone misjudging me, making a mistake, offering me something I should not have taken, but not my merit. However, if I fail, then it is because of my own fault. So that is a very generalized summary of how it feels, but it's an immense baggage to carry if the voices in the head are constantly telling you that you are an imposter and you do not deserve what you got. Now, moving on, what is the imposter syndrome or the imposter phenomenon? It's a transient voice. It comes and goes. It doesn't stay all the time. But that internal chatter kind of lasts, until people do something about it. It does impact our thoughts and beliefs of what we can do, where we can go, what we can achieve. Very interestingly, and this is what especially fascinates me about this research, that it thrives on the fear of success. So the more you succeed, for people who feel like imposters, the more you succeed, the more that chatter gets louder. And with the research that we do to see how to get people interested in science, what fascinated me is these are the people who are already in STEM fields in various positions. They are doing very well, they are succeeding, and yet they feel that they do not deserve their success. So what happens as a result? That is the paradox that really fascinated me. Now, it manifests in many multiple ways. It could come with a lack of belonging. In fact, the more I'm working on this, the more I'm talking to people, the more I tend to think that everyone who feels like an imposter. And do notice I don't say everyone who is an imposter, because there are no imposters. There are only people who feel like they are imposters. So people who feel like imposters, they have their unique kind of a fingerprint, in the sense that no two people might experience it because of the same reasons, because of the same conditions, but it could come with a lack of belonging, not belonging in a field, not belonging in the lab, like I mentioned. It could come with a constant fear of being found out, and the fear of being thrown out of your current position. It also comes with attributing my success to someone else and not to myself. So I don't feel that I deserve what I got. It also comes with feeling invisible, and I'll be giving you specific examples, but feeling invisible, feeling I don't have a voice, I'm not heard in the spaces. It comes down to basically not able to separate what's the fact. The fact is that I'm successful, I deserve it, I'm competent, and the fictitious voice in the head that constantly say that I do not deserve this. So it's not just a voice in the head, it has some real manifestations. And I'm presenting some quotes here. not submitting a manuscript that you've been working on for so long just because you're afraid to take that last step. You feel that you'll be judged, the quality of your work, and you will be judged. Or not pursuing your areas of research because of this fear that you'll fail. Not applying for awards that where you can self-nominate yourself, saying yes to please everyone. In these examples, you'll see that someone didn't go to Stanford and they went to a lower ranked college because they felt that they could not succeed because of the imposter syndrome. So all these conversations that I present are centered around people feeling like imposters. It's also someone who didn't apply for awards, someone who did not negotiate salary and felt that they were stuck with a very inequitable salary. So these have some real manifestations in the way we behave at workplace and in our personal lives. Now, I'm wondering if you've thought of any of these questions, and if you have other questions, please feel free to share it with us on chat. And we will be, I won't be answering these questions right away, but as we move along in the presentation, you will be, we might find answers to some of these questions. How prevalent is it? Is it like everyone faces it? Only some people face it? Is it only something that women face, or do men, does everyone, people from all genders, they face it? If men face it, then are their experiences similar, or is it something that has gender differences? Also, is it because of the way we are treated at work? Is it always perpetrated by someone who's an older male person who's in power, right? Or is it something that can be overcome, or are you stuck with it all your life? Does it get better? Does it get worse? Also, interestingly, is it always bad to have the imposter syndrome? Or is there something that could be valuable in this experience? Also, does having a female boss or a female advisor help? Are these only internal voices? So I hope that you have your own some of the other questions, because I would love to hear the questions. But in the meantime, moving on, what does feeling like an imposter mean? And these are some of the quotes that I've presented. I won't be reading out all of them, but it comes with a lack of belonging. For example, this person who is a published author in the journal Science feels that they were given authorship as a courtesy and they did not deserve it. It also comes with the fear of being found out. Like I said, that someone feels they fooled everyone during the interview and during the entire coursework. So didn't just fool people once, but people feel that they fooled everyone for years, and that's why they are in the program. Also, attributing success to others. It comes with a level of invisibility, especially when faculty mistake students. Well, when faculty are mistaken as students, or students are mistaken as someone in some other role, like custodians or janitors. And quite a lot of people have talked about the invisibility that comes, that I am a faculty, but people around me don't see me as a faculty. Voicelessness, feeling voiceless. Female students talking about how they're asked to shut up when they ask questions in class. The professor would not answer their question, whereas if a male student asks the same question, then they would answer it. When something a woman presents, a research idea is ignored, but if the man talks of the same thing, then it's praised, then it's appreciated. So this person says, I wasn't really being heard in that space. So there are different ways in which people go through the process of experiencing the imposter syndrome. Now, people who make you feel like imposters, yeah?
Sorry, there's a great question in the chat that kind of goes with what you were just talking about. Someone asked, does trauma or abuse play a role? Can you talk about how that kind of contributes?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a few slides talking about how gender harassment and sexual harassment, and I will, like in a few minutes, talk about that as well. Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah. So people who make you feel like imposters, they could belong to all genders. It's not just, Before I started talking to people, I thought it's probably because an older male boss belittles you or makes you feel small. But what I found is these could be people from all genders. These could be older men and women in power. So the way an older female advisor treat a student could also make the student feel like an imposter. It could be an advisor, it could be an instructor making inappropriate sexual references while teaching class. I have a few examples of those. It could also be a peer or someone closer to your age. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone who's older, but also someone who's closer to your age. And also a younger male student. If you are a faculty, I have a few examples of a faculty or a teaching assistant and the way a younger, typically male student made them feel. So for the next few minutes, we'll talk of a few discipline-oriented or discipline-oriented examples that I found in STEM. I'll talk of 3 disciplines specifically. Disciplines that require you to go to field work. So you spend extensive amount of time in the field. These are typically disciplines where there are more men than women. Geology, certain fields of biology. In this first example, this person, I heard unnecessary comments about my gender, implying that I was not able to perform basic tasks in my job description, as basic as driving large trucks and trailers. I would be asked to get out of the truck so that a male colleague could back it up for me. This made the person question, did the person really belong in the field? It probably seems like a subtle thing, maybe not so subtle, but it does, if you hear certain comments like this constantly over a period of time, it makes people question, do they really belong in the field? In the second example, there's a PhD student, a female PhD student, who shared that she would be constantly sexually harassed by the fishermen she worked with in marine sciences. Her advisor would not only not support her, but he would kind of, laugh with the fishermen, but also tell her that she should develop a thick skin and she should not get perturbed by these things. So trauma, sexual harassment, gender harassment do play a big role in people feeling like imposters. And I'll tell you in a minute how that works. Now think of male majority disciplines like engineering, like computer science, like math, like physics. Subtle, not subtle, but little comments like, you don't look like a mathematician. Like, what does a mathematician look like, right? Or this person pointed out something in a graph, and a male peer said that, just because you're a girl doesn't mean that you are not smart, as if, they are contradictory things. Or this person, this student, who would be assigned all kinds of jobs that had got nothing to do with the PhD, like, running to the copier, making coffee, doing secretarial duties, because she was told that maybe she would do a better job of taking care of these things. So here we are getting into gender assigned roles, gender labeled roles, looking at women as the caregivers, looking at men as those who can do, they can drive large vehicles and things like that. Surprisingly, it didn't get better in female majority disciplines, like different fields in biology. There are some examples that I have presented here. There were many, many more examples in biology. For example, an older male professor in botany giving examples like pectin in plant cell walls and commenting like, some of you girls who might do canning and make jams and preserves. Or coming up with acronyms that are offensive, like in agriculture, LISA, low input sustainable agriculture, and then making jokes in class, like Lisa's kind of nice to explore, Lisa would make a very good farm wife, these kind of derogatory comments. In the third example, an instructor in pharmacology made this comment that I published a paper a few years ago that showed male sweat actually is something that gets female going. And he said that in a class which was majority women. And this person was famous in making these comments, but what the person shared with me is no action was ever taken, even if students reported that these are the kind of comments that he made. The last quote from someone in ecology, there was a certain expectation of body image that goes if you are in ecology. You can't wear lipsticks, you can't wear heels, you can't wear nail polish, you have to have an old t-shirt, jeans. And there are women I talk to who actually, in order to feel accepted, they would stop using makeup because of the constant comments they got in relation to how they looked. So now coming to the question that how does it impact, and especially how does experiencing trauma, harassment, leading to feeling like an imposter, how does that process happen? Based on the research I've done, I found that there are 4 different ways in which people talk about it. First, people develop trust issues. They don't trust the person, but they also do not trust themselves. Like in this example, as a survivor of sexual assault, I feel like an imposter because I'm guarded. That factored into how I view my own capabilities. Maybe my boss has ulterior motives for offering me this opportunity or connecting me with this person. It also made people question, and I had people of all genders participate, but guess what? Out of those 400 interviews, about 87% of them were women. So it was definitely a very self-selected group. Most of these examples are what women have shared. You start to question your own competency as you internalize those disparaging comments, like a colleague saying that your brain is not as developed as the male's brain, so you cannot be a good scientist. That actually made this person question whether she really deserved to be there. Or, people making romantic advances, you turned them down, and then this person, every time he saw her, he would comment on her weight, her body image. And somehow, people tend to internalize those comments for people who feel like imposters, and they actually believe that maybe they do not deserve to be where they are. So these are the 2 ways. There are other 2 ways in which people internalize it. Feeling invisible and feeling voiceless. So a female president at my institution often said, hi to older men or men in general. I would be standing with them and she would completely ignore me. Now, look at the last comment. Again, a male colleague, so not necessarily someone older, but someone, a peer, who told this person that her only contribution to the conferences was her pretty beautiful looks. And she felt that even though she was presenting a prestigious paper, that her looks, that his evaluation of my contribution was that she was pretty. So just those little microaggressions make you question, do I really fit in this place? A lot of conversations that I've had boils down to the feeling that do I really belong? If this is how people treat me, this is how people see me, then maybe I did not deserve to be here. Maybe I just got my success as a fluke. Now, moving on, how does it manifest? How does it? I was also interested in PhD students versus postdocs versus faculty versus people in the industry, because I assume that maybe it gets better with time, maybe it gets better with age. What I found interestingly, and I'm not showing you what I found with faculty data, but it's kind of the trend is the same, which is if you look at why PhD students feel like imposters versus why postdocs feel like imposters, what are the manifestations? The first 3 points for both of them is the same. They are reluctant to apply something new, a new knowledge, something new that they learned, reluctant to pursue anything new, not asking for help, having a hard time networking, asking questions, scared of public speaking, scared of scientific writing. The examples are so similar for not only PhD students and postdocs, but also older faculty, like full professors who have been publishing for a long time. They have expressed similar insecurities about publishing papers because once it's out there for the whole world to see. Being scared of progress, being scared of public recognition. Every time you pass an exam, you pass your qualifiers, you pass your PhD, you feel that something bad is going to happen. Comparing yourself unfavorably with others, or not applying because you don't visualize yourself as a faculty. Procrastinating, experiencing mental health issues. I have a few examples to share about what exactly people said. Not deserving to pass the qualifiers, feeling terrified that you did pass your qualifiers. Also, I don't ask good questions. I don't think critically. I don't take myself seriously. I don't speak or act or think like a scientist. Somehow it's ingrained in some people that they are who they are, but they don't think like the role that they have assumed. Everyone has better questions. Everyone knows what they're talking about, just that I don't know. Public speaking, that people are somehow going to find out if I open my mouth that I'm not as knowledgeable. What happens as a result, this person doesn't present at as many conferences because of the fear of being found out. I really don't like to hang around my poster because I'm stressed about who's going to come and talk to me about it. Also academic writing. My advisor will scrutinize my paper so carefully, he'll catch any little mistake, and then that little mistake would blow up into the realization, I don't know what I'm talking about, and the next day I'll be kicked out of the lab. I mean, some of these examples, they're really like very vivid imagination that how one little mistake would be kind of magnified to such an extent that people will be thrown out of where they are. But imagine the amount of stress that someone lives with if this is what they believe in. Also, my postdoc boss asked me to take on a new highly complex task. And instead of being excited, this person says that I emailed him with a list of reasons I can't do all that and almost got myself fired. I feel uncomfortable asking questions because I'm afraid that it will give away that I am an imposter. People come up with interesting questions about different connections and ideas, and I don't think of any of those questions or any of those connections. In the third example, this person is very aware that being in that current position is detrimental to their career. They have to get that faculty position. But this person believes that if she had to transition, she would just flop, and it's prevented her from even applying for many of those faculty positions. Also, procrastination, because you're afraid to hit that submit button or to hit that OK button. Now, interestingly, a lot of these things were also shared by people from the BIPOC community, but their experiences were also unique in certain ways. Being in STEM, where there's a huge underrepresentation of African Americans, Native Americans, people of Hispanic backgrounds, people felt like they are the only one. Imagine if you are the only Black person in a larger group of people. That is something that also comes with a lack of belonging. Do I really belong here? Then there are all these external cues where people experience stereotyping, microaggression, judgment, because of who they are, because of how they speak, because of how they look, even the way they do their hair, the way they wear clothes. Also feeling like a diversity enhancer. So I'll share specific examples, but feeling like I got this job because people wanted to enhance diversity in their department and make that would make them look good. So sharing sharing lots of examples, just looking around and not seeing anybody. And all these examples were shared by Black men and women. So just looking around and not seeing anybody I identify with, particularly as a Black female, wondering whether or not I have enough authority, enough experience to be in that space and time. What people actually felt lacking was mentorship, because people wanted to see more people from their community succeed, people who look like them succeed. And when they didn't find it, they didn't they were not able to go find that mentorship, that support that they were looking for. As a Black woman, it's a rare thing for me to inhabit this space. There's not a lot of Black people in science. I somehow always manage to achieve, despite statistics telling me that I should not. Stereotyping, this person, this PhD student, was mistaken as an audiovisual person when she entered the class, and the professor did not even know her, although she was a third-year PhD student. There are so many examples like this where Black men and women talked about what made them feel like imposters. In the fifth example, they got an offer letter from a very reputed company, software company, and felt that it was just a quota, a number. Maybe that is what they made the interview easy for this person, so that this person can get in. Now, who are vulnerable to feeling like imposters? Based on the conversations that I've had, I've seen more women compared to men talk about feeling like imposters, members of the BIPOC community. Also, those who take a break. For example, women who take a break to have children. When they come back, there's not just insecurity, but some of the people are treated terribly by their advisors, by their bosses, because they took a break. In fact, a few people also talked about how their advisor explicitly told them not to have babies when they got that PhD admit, when they were either PhD students or postdocs. Also, people who do interdisciplinary research, because somehow they feel that they neither know anything of this field nor do they know anything of that field. So that always brought in a level of anxiety that probably they are not expert in any one particular field. Those who experience frequent transitions, this came up a lot with people who get MD, PhD degrees. So they do 2 years of MD training, take a break, do their PhD, take a break, then finish their MD training. But also any kind of transition, like from undergrad to grad, from PhD to postdoc, postdoc to faculty, any kind of transition brought a lot of anxiety and feeling like an imposter. Again, those who feel like I'm the only one, like I'm the only Black person in a lab, I'm the only woman in the lab, or I'm the only genome, an expert in genome sciences in a lab that does something else. So feeling like the spotlight is on you. Also, those who experience negative workplace environments, like harassment, like trauma, like one of you said. Now, revisiting our questions, and I'm wondering if there were other questions in the chat, how prevalent it is. I don't have exact numbers, but there are studies that say that it could be anything between 40 to 80% of people feel the imposter phenomenon. Do men experience it too? Yes. Is it similar? Well, interestingly, what I've seen is for men who feel like imposters, some of them, not all of them, talk about it in a very different way compared to women. And I'll give you an example. I interviewed a PhD student, well, not a PhD student, he was done by then, but he said that, in my first year of PhD, I felt like an imposter. And so I went ahead and I took a few courses, and I was done with that. I had a beer with my buddy and then I was chilling out. Whereas women talked about the way they are treated at work, more of the external environments. You can't just take 2 courses and change the external environment around you, right? So I've had some conversations where men talk about it in a very different way. It's short term. It's not that long. And also it's mostly because of lackings from within, whereas for women mostly talk about the environment and how it reinforces certain feelings of feeling like an imposter. So is it because of the way we are treated based on gender? Possibly, could be, although there could be other reasons. Is it always by someone male, older, or in power? No, it could very well be your student who's making offensive comments about how you look in class. Can it be overcome? It could be managed, it could also be overcome. What it requires are conversations like this, because that is what normalizes it. Like I said, some people said they didn't even know that this has a term. So not knowing it has a name made them think that they're crazy, there's something in their head, but they can't put a name to it. The moment people learn that it has a term, they can go look it up. They can connect with communities where people talk about it, and that normalizes that experience. Does it get better or worse with time and age? I've had both kind of responses. Some people said it gets better with age, people can hide it. But some people also said that with time, there are newer roles, newer responsibilities, and every time there's a new role, it again brings back that fear. So I've had both kinds of conversations. Is it always bad? Well, some people, not many, but some people said that it's also self-protective. It keeps them grounded. It keeps them aware of who they are. So it's not always that they see it as something bad. Does having a female advisor help? Absolutely not. So many examples of female advisors treating their students very poorly, even when they had to take a break, take care of children, female advisor. So yeah, definitely it doesn't help. Are these solely internal voices? No, there's a lot going on in the environment that makes people, that contribute to people feeling like imposters. So what do we do from here? Is it like, can we do? I mean, there are a few books that I have read. There are other books, I'm sure. In fact, the last one, the one on the right, Dr. Pauline Clance, she's the one who first coined the term in the 1970s, 78, I believe. And she interviewed a lot of women, and that is how she came up with the term, and she learned that a lot of women don't think that they deserve what they got, and they are imposters. So there are certain books, there are many books that talk about it. Also, what are the tools and resources? I think Melissa talked about the Impostor Phenomenon scale that is available online. So you can self-evaluate and see where you fall in the spectrum. Also think of the internal voices versus the external cues. Ask yourself that is it just something in my head, or is someone treating me in a way, or is my environment making me feel like an imposter? That kind of a reflection could help. Also recognize the fictitious voices and the external cues and ask yourself, can I change the narrative? Is it something that is true, or is it something that I can look in a different way? It's so important to create safe spaces for these conversations. And I mean, that is why I'm so grateful to Women in Science Portland for giving me this platform, this forum to talk and connect with all of you. The more these conversations happen, the more people connect and share their experiences, and that is really powerful. I hear a term very often, fake it till you make it. And this is my personal opinion, that when you fake something, you reject the idea, you reject that it's happening, you ignore it. So instead of faking it, or even talking about faking it, could you own your insecurities and work on it? Also ask yourself, that is your imposter syndrome protective, or is it self-handicapping? Is it preventing you from applying for that award that you totally deserve? Or is it protecting you in certain ways? Connect with groups on social media. Also talk about failures. We live in a culture where we glorify success, or success, the definition of what we understand as success. But we do not talk about failures. I mean, on social media, on Twitter, everyone, I mean, every day I see people are getting awards, people are getting grants, people are writing papers. And somehow all these individual voices become one collective voice that tells me that everyone is succeeding and I'm not succeeding. In fact, some of you might have heard of something called the CV of failures. I don't know if you've heard about it. I think a professor at Princeton University first wrote their CV of including everything where they had failed. And if you Google it now, a lot of people have done it. I plan to do it sometime. that kind of normalizes what we know as failure. I mean, really, like, is not getting something the real failure, or is not applying at all the failure? So some people have talked about how writing a CV of failures have also helped them to understand how much effort goes into something, and really, do they really not deserve to be in that position if they have worked so hard to be there? So with that, I would love to hear your comments, but one quick thing, if you Google me, Google my name, and please feel free to connect. I would love to connect with all of you. I have a Twitter account where I post not only the work that I do, the research that I do, but also articles about what other people do about the imposter syndrome. So please, if you're on Twitter, I would love to connect with you. I also have a podcast about a year old. You just Google my name and you'll be able to find that podcast. So with that, I would love to listen to your comments, your experiences, your questions.
Yeah, that was excellent, Deva. Thank you so much. Before we open it up to questions, there were a few questions that I wanted to ask from the chat. One person asked if you yourself have experienced imposter syndrome, and maybe how that changed kind of as you researched it more and talked to more people.
I don't believe that I have experienced it. I have experienced like different other, feelings, like some of these same things, like feeling like, do I really belong here, or do I deserve to be here? It's hard for me to know, because, when you make a living out of reading papers and writing papers on the topic, it becomes very hard to kind of separate what you feel versus what you do. But I don't think I have experienced it.
And then another question is, on the theme of success / fear of failure / glorifying power, do you think that this phenomenon is the result of Western values?
I don't know, because as I talk to more and more people in India, it's very hard to. I think talking about values, I mean, this is my opinion, but I think it's more about the value we put on the so-called definition of success, what success means, and how, you have to have awesome papers and grants, and you have to give TED talks. We don't talk about failures, because I think that probably doesn't fit into our value system. If more people talked about the number of times that we have failed, uh, it would become more normalized.
Yeah, and I mean, as you were giving all of these examples, I was like, that's sexism, that's the patriarchy, that's like all of these, and you kept referencing microaggressions, and it's those things too that are perpetuated by society, I think, and there are some things that probably are a part of Western culture, maybe more than others, but then there's certain things that I think are universal, just in the way, like, yeah, universal microaggressions that are probably felt similarly across different cultures.
Yeah, in fact, I was very surprised by some of my findings. For example, I assumed that probably having an advisor or a boss who's female helps. But I talked to so many people who said that it's exactly, their female advisors replicating, mimicking those kind of aggressive behaviors that they are used. And there were conversations around how you need, in order to succeed, you have to be a certain way as a woman. You
Right.
can't take breaks, you can't have children, you can't do this, you can't do that. So female advisors also modeled certain behaviors that male advisors did.
Right. Yeah, and I think in part of that too, we need to think about how we also internalize some of those models that we see, and what kind of language we're using within our own heads, and then also towards other people. Yeah.
Right.
So here's a couple more questions. I'll read off these couple more questions in the chat, and then we'll stop the recording. And if anyone else wants to ask questions out loud, please do. To what extent do you think not talking about failures is related to how competitive the sciences are.
Yeah, to what extent is, I mean, I wouldn't be able to put a number on it, but talking about failures actually helps. You know, when I learn, and I see Donna here, hi Donna, but when she talks about the number of times that she has failed, she didn't get a grant, she had a paper rejected, that tells me that if she has seen so much rejection, it's probably normal. It's not normal to succeed all the time. And I think we have to have these conversations around failure, just because social media is great in connecting people, but social media magnifies the voice. The voice gets, whatever voice it is, gets so much louder. So I see people everywhere, you know, getting NSF grants, NIH grants, and it makes me wonder, am I not doing enough? Am I not good enough? I think social media also plays a role in magnifying that voice in the head.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Going back to talking about women who maybe aren't the best supporters, a question, do you think that this will change as a new generation of women become mentors? Is it something about the generation?
I'm an optimist, I would say yes, but what it requires is a lot of empathy. A lot of, because human experiences are shared and there are only like so many human experiences we have. The more we talk about those experiences, the more we have empathy and the more we collaborate and not compete. Okay, again, this culture of competing and pitting people against each other versus collaborating and learning from each other. When a culture like that changes, when people have more empathy, that is probably how things can get better.
Great. I think I'm gonna have Astrid stop the recording now and we can kind of open it up. If people want to continue asking